In this video, I'm going to be showing you 6 tips for applying vinyl to pumpkins, whether you're using a real one or a pumpkin from the craft store. If you're new here, my name is Nisha. Welcome to Little Craft Nest. If you're interested in crafting and Cricut tutorials and DIY, make sure you press that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you won't miss a video. As you can see here, I've got 2 pumpkins. This one came from the farm down the road, and this one came from Michael's craft store. Now, as you can imagine, this pumpkin over here is very heavy, and this one is actually quite light. I can throw it, it's like a ball, and it looks like it's plastic, but it's actually made out of this very thick, hard foam. You can also see that I have decorated both these pumpkins exactly the same. I just used regular vinyl on both, and the shiny leaves here are adhesive foil. So I'm going to be showing you a few tips on how to get the vinyl to stick properly to your pumpkins. Tip number 1, we want to clean our pumpkins first. So whether you're using one from the craft store or from a farmer's field, put a bit of alcohol on some paper towel and just wipe down the surface of your pumpkin. You don't want to have any debris or dirt getting in the way of your design, causing the vinyl not to stick. Tip number 2, you want to put your vinyl on the smoothest part of the pumpkin. Now, every pumpkin is created differently. Whether you get one from the craft store or the farmer's field, there are so many different varieties of pumpkins. So you want to find that smooth, nice surface. I first wanted to apply the vinyl to this side of the pumpkin, but as you can see, it is very bumpy and it has a lot of natural bumps on it. But I like this side because it was tilting upwards and the other side was tilting down. So I tried to apply some removable vinyl to this side of the pumpkin first, and it did not stick. It would not come off the transfer tape, and I got pretty frustrated with it. So I decided to try permanent vinyl on that side, and that also did not work. So I turned the pumpkin around and I applied permanent vinyl on this side of the pumpkin, and that worked really well. Now, the craft pumpkin is quite a bit smoother. You don't have to worry about those natural bumps on the pumpkin, but you still want to have a somewhat of a smoothish surface. So on my craft store pumpkin, you can see that there is a seam going right down on this side. So I didn't want to have my design with that seam right in the middle, so it's right on the side. So you may want to look for the seam on your pumpkin if it's a fake one before you apply your design. Tip number 3, what vinyl should you use? So for the craft store pumpkin, I used removable vinyl. I thought if I use removable vinyl, it'll be easy to take it off if I want to change the design up. Maybe next year I want to put a different design on, because this pumpkin will probably be going into storage after November 1st. I had absolutely no problem applying the removable vinyl to this pumpkin. However, if you want it to last a little longer and you're not interested in changing up the design that often, you can go ahead and use permanent vinyl. And as I mentioned with the last tip, for the real pumpkin, I did start off using removable vinyl, but that was not working out too well. So I did end up using permanent vinyl for the real pumpkin. My real pumpkin will not be going into storage. It'll probably be going into the compost after Halloween night. However, if you did want to remove the vinyl off of it so you could carve the pumpkin just before Halloween, you can easily peel the permanent vinyl right off the pumpkin. So you may want to do that if you got your pumpkins early. You can put vinyl on leading up to Halloween, and then a few days before you can carve the pumpkin. Because as you know, if you carve your pumpkin a few weeks before Halloween, your pumpkin will probably be rotten Halloween night. So putting vinyl on your pumpkin beforehand is a great idea, and then you can just remove it before you carve it. Or if you have a really cool vinyl design on your pumpkin, you can use that as your cut lines when you're carving your pumpkin. Tip number 4, if you are applying words to your pumpkin like I did, where it says hello fall, it is so much easier doing it one line at a time. So for my craft store pumpkin here, I put both words on at the same time. Now, it was possible, but the process took so much longer and slower. And so when I did the real pumpkin, I did one line at a time and it worked out so much easier. So if you're doing rows of text, break them up and you'll be able to get them on your pumpkin a lot easier. Tip number 5. When putting your vinyl on your pumpkins, I tried 2 different methods. So for my craft store pumpkin, I started at the one side and went over to the other side, which seemed to work all right. But when I did my real pumpkin over here, I started in the middle and pushed outwards, and that seemed to go a lot easier for me. You also want to remember when you're putting the vinyl down, you want to press in each groove. So you want to get that groove line in really good before you go over the bump. So then push in your groove line and then go over the bump. And you really want to try to avoid getting those bubbles in your vinyl, but it's okay if you get them in your transfer tape. If you find your transfer tape is like bubbling up a little bit and kind of getting in your way, just grab a pair of scissors and make some slits into your transfer tape, and that will make it easier to apply the vinyl. You'll also want to go over each letter of your vinyl with your finger, just like you're tracing each letter, and that will also help push all those bubbles out of your vinyl. And that leads me into tip number 6. Make sure your vinyl pieces aren't too big. So you'll see I did little leaves here. These are adhesive foil and they're nice and small. So when I applied these, I just pushed them into the groove and then smooth them out over the bump. Now, if you had a huge leaf on here, it would be very tricky to get that on there nice and smooth. So you want to make sure your design is small. I did a face on another pumpkin. It was a relatively flatter surface, but I did these giant eyes and I kept getting these bubbles in them. So to avoid that as well, if you do want to put a really big solid image, a face or an eye, or a giant leaf on your pumpkin, you can just put a little cut through your vinyl and then just have those vinyl pieces slightly overlap, and that's how you can put that down. I hope you enjoy these pumpkin decorating vinyl tips. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you're interested in the fonts I use, because people always ask that question, I will leave that down in the description below. And if you're looking for more fall decor ideas, check out my last video on reverse canvases, and we have some nice fall canvases you can check out there. If you're still watching, please press that like button, and I hope to see you on more crafting adventures.